Hey everyone, here we are. I've got Hamza here. I think before we do anything, as always, as is tradition, let's just do a little grounding.
Mm,
Um, Taking a pause, if you want to close your eyes with me, feeling how across all distances we're being held by the same earth. And just taking some time to breathe here. And whenever it's right, coming back into collective presence. Hmm. Maybe we can just you wanna go first and then I'll go or vice versa, but just each of us share something that would help us feel introduced in this space.
mm. A nice broad introductory possible beginning there. Um,
I wouldn't
what would
dare
you,
introduce you myself, so
why you wouldn't introduce me?
not here. I don't know. It's not a podcast, so
Oh, I know, I should remember that actually.
yeah.
What would make me feel introduced is maybe a good way to do that would be for me to talk about what I can see the laptop right ahead of me, but what else I can see on my desk with me right
Okay.
now.
Okay, cool.
Um, I've got some Tiger Balm to my right,
Hmm.
and that is for uh, continued back pain. I've got a finished cup of very strong ginger tea. Um, I have a bottle of water here. Um, all of which kind of actually, now that I'm thinking about it, are all pointing to ways in which I am trying to stay embodied, which that's actually quite a shift for me. I'm having a small revelation to realize of realizing that I'm yeah, less cerebral, more embodied than I used to be. But there is a little external hard drive here full of cerebral projects, just to cap it off. So
Hmm.
maybe that's my my best introduction.
I will come back to this cerebral embodied thing later.
Mm.
And my desk here is a loose stack of papers and books that I'm putting off, putting away, or maybe throwing out. Some emotional attachment because there's some feedback and evaluations from the 6-week course I ran last year
Mm.
that I'm like wanting to harvest into some kind of artifact before I say goodbye to the paper. I have tissues. I always need to have tissues on hand in case I spontaneously start crying.
Mm.
And I've got my coffee and my water as well. And do I have a way of tying all of this in into like one? I think what it is like I'm in a period of change. I actually like very much prefer to keep an entirely clean desk, but I'm in a period.
Really?
Yeah, it's my strong
Can you do
preference.
that? Can you keep it clean? The
No,
entire desk clear?
I can for periods of time, and then it's like my email. It's like
Mm,
I can, 5 emails in the inbox, and then it's 100, 200, and then one day I'm like, I can't do anything until I clear the inbox, and
yeah, right.
and do that in a more regular fashion. I need to have my seasons of expansion and and I'm in a season of clearing. Everything's getting cleared out for me.
Mm,
Um, and I haven't understood yet how or why. I'm just haven't I still I think I'm still in the feelings of change and loss and upheaval.
mm. Yeah, does it do you do you feel lighter when you remove these things? Or when you clear these things, there's a sense of lightness? 'Cause that's the promise of that, I feel like. But do you feel it?
Yeah, but in order, yes, I do, and in order to get there, I have to feel everything, every piece of charge that's associated with those things. That's sort of, I think, why we have a tough time letting go is because it's hard to feel the fullness of the energy that's stored in that artifact for us.
Right.
So I have such an easy time throwing out trash, but none of this is trash. It's all very important to me. And I have to honor. And maybe that's
And does it become trash when it's once it's rid of meaning?
no. I mean, it's hard to say that because the thing that made it not trash before, the thing that makes a piece of paper not trash is the emotional charge. And if I
Yeah.
take in the emotional charge into my body, then it's a piece of paper again.
But it's not, I guess what I'm driving out curious about is what suddenly I'm like curious about what makes it trash, or because if trash is the
No,
thing
it's
that makes
not.
it easy to
This
get
it
rid of,
can't
I
be
want to
trash.
know what makes something trash.
Oh, like the tissue paper bag, plastic that's I won't be using it. But now we're getting into the deconstruction of the word trash, which I mistakenly used.
No, I'm just curious. Suddenly, my mind is worrying about
I
how
have
we
to
would
be
turn something into a piece of trash. Because I
now I
have a
have to be
problem with
seen.
getting
I have
rid
to
of
be
things
seen for
as
seeing
well.
some things as trash and other things as not trash. And it's recorded. Fuck.
Oh yeah.
Well, this brings me to something I've been wanting to ask you about in
Mm,
this format is like the how you relate to the context of performativity. And in order to ask this question, I do have to introduce you a little bit more. Um, one thing I know about you, and as you were talking about your hard drive of cerebral projects, is that you're a pretty meticulous thinker, and you actually have your impulses, and then you have the ideation that follows impulse, and then you have the artifact and the sort of like the story. And I read this extended piece that you did on pedestrianism,
mm,
um, on the concept of I'm not going to do it justice, but the idea of like the radical act of staying a pedestrian and choosing to live with that level of slowness and
mm.
the relationship with space and time that was available when you made those choices. And you didn't just have that. You could say what I just said, and that's a striking idea. But then you had like a treatise and a manifesto and a tome that I remember reading and making a silly video to. And um, one thing that you're kind of understated about is sort of like the depth of your um, the depth of rigor that you put into your performance practice and your practice as a teacher, which is also a type of performing. Oh, okay. Get
Wow,
I have to
celebration
look out for
time.
my gestures. Um, and yeah, so with all of that, putting all of that into the space and all that into the room, and then adding the layer of we are being recorded and Caitlin's here watching us, and I'm
Mm.
constantly looking at the screen. I'm constantly you won't be recorded until we spotlight you, Kate, but I'm constantly looking at your face to see, is Kate enjoying this? Is this fun? Hamza and I are laughing. Is Kate also laughing? Like, I think that there's something about this project for me that has been very interesting because I have these incredible conversations with people. And as we're talking, I'm like, if beautiful things are being evoked. And then I'm like, we should do a public conversation because I want this to be an offering and I want to be seen and I want my friends to be seen and I want my friendships to be seen. And then they're like a little
Hmm.
bit different
Yeah, right. Because
uh,
of the nature of it being recorded, or
because of the
is
performance.
that what you
Yeah.
suspect?
And it's something I've witnessed my whole life. It's something that I navigate with people I work with as a coach, like leaders who are like, in order to, if I were to share myself, the vulnerability of sharing my true self, that would feel
Mm.
performative, or I'm nervous about being performative. I feel avoidant, I'm a bit cautious of it. So I'm like, okay, having said all those things, I hand it over to you to make a grand sweeping unifying theory for us.
Wow, okay. Um, I don't, the thread I'll pick up on there is I think this moment of where you're reaching for the authentic self or bringing the authentic self in relationship to the performance. Um, because I think often these things are put in contrast to each other. The performance is something that you do, and the authentic self is something that you are. And I just don't I just never really felt like that myself. I can understand why people feel like that, and I can also see that in sometimes I see a performance and then I meet and talk to the person and I think, wow, okay, these are distinct. One is a doing and one is a being. And
Yeah.
I sense that. But I think what performance has taught me or what I enjoy about performing now that maybe I didn't when I was a little bit younger is I am trying my best to uh, unperform while I'm performing. So while I'm up on stage and reading a text of mine, I want to give a performance, but I want to bring it as far away from as possible from the act of performing while I'm doing that. And for me, the act of performing is about the tension between having the authentic self on one side, the performance self on the other, and how I vacillate between those two. And that's the tension and dynamism that I'm always reaching for when I'm on stage. Um, and that's the dynamism that I hope makes my performance something exciting. I'm using this measure to show and demonstrate and reveal to my audience my relationship with my work.
Mm.
And I think through that process and through practicing that on stage, I also have come to enjoy practicing that off stage. And I also enjoy moments in my life where I'm allowed or invited in by somebody else's presence to be performative. Um, and to enjoy that and to realize that in that same scale in a day-to-day moment off stage, um, I can reach towards the performative self. And I think there's no clearer indication for me the malleability of the performative self. There's no
Mm.
clearer indication for me about the fact that it's not about a stage performance self or anything like this. This all shifted for me when working in service um, and working like
Right.
as a working making coffee for people and serving people at tables. I remember a friend of mine used to say to me, oh yeah, it's just because every table is a stage. So you deliver your coffee or the plates to a table. You know them or you don't know them. Maybe they're regulars, maybe they're not, but it's a stage and it's a moment. You've got such a short period of time to give something.
Mm.
It's just a flash,
Mm.
and then you're off again. And I think seeing the performative self come out in a moment within that kind of labor, stage labor, and I've allowed it to become, I've allowed it to animate my day to day, rather than trying to find an animated self that exists outside of myself that I put on. Um, so that's
Mm.
maybe just a little bit about performance that I am reaching reaching towards and have been reaching towards through a lot of difficulty and a lot of failure, a lot of success. I've been really successful with performances by my own measure,
Yeah.
and there are many performances I've had that have been awful by my own measure. Um,
Yeah, same.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I was going to
Same.
ask you, do you feel when you're hosting, hosting is a type of performance as well, and it relies upon certain precepts and things that you know that you can do in order to make people feel comfortable or invited in. I'm curious if you feel like that as a host.
If I were to make any articulation about my everyday performance practice, which is like, performing where we make the stage wherever we are, maybe
Hmm,
thinking of my body and the field around my body as the stage,
hmm,
right? Just kind of what you're pointing at with the every table is a stage, is a possibility that every moment is a stage.
hmm,
What brings me the most pleasure is to perform and invite a movement, a sequence, choreography with another person or people that disrupts our expectations of what it should be.
hmm,
So we disrupt the expectations of what a host should be. But
hmm,
it's not like if I do it well and when I'm successful and like you named, I've failed many times. But to do it well is to be invitational and to say, you too can break the rules.
hmm,
So for somebody come to my house and I say, you don't need to be hosted. I want you to be at home.
hmm.
What does that take? What kind of performance will evoke that?
Yeah,
Um, or to invite your friend onto your podcast and to say, well, I don't want it to be a podcast and I don't want to interview you. I want you to, I actually just want us to hang out,
yeah, right,
which is
right.
actually a lot of podcasts are just dudes hanging out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
but then but
that's
then
a
there's
format, I guess.
the pleasure comes in this taking the moment to say it's not a podcast, which I
Yeah,
do
that's
I
right.
take that opportunity all the time. And yeah, and then I think there's something about disruption that makes space. Um, you had named this, like there's the authentic self and the performance and the tension. And then I think behind that authentic self, like attuning to another voice, which is the voice of the land or the voice of
Mm,
spirit or the voice of the collective. And then it's like these are intention, and then these are intention. And can I collapse them? Can
right,
I
yeah.
collapse them so that what I perform is my authentic experience of what I'm being asked to be by the universe?
Mm,
And that's like, I don't know, that's gets kind of abstract, starts to get abstract, but that's what I have been wanting to research when I get on stage. Um, and partially it's, there's a part of it that's like I have I have both fear of and disinterest in getting on stage and reciting from a script
mm,
and performing a role that was defined by like Shakespeare or whoever, or you know, like I don't want to be directed by anyone except God.
yeah.
And that's that limits and expands what I'm able to do as a performer and what kind of performance I create.
Mm. I'm curious about the I'm curious about the fear and disinterest. In
Of
that.
course you would be.
I mean, just because I mean, disinterest isn't, but fear is a very, very powerful motivator to have, I think, for performance and something that oftentimes I think people imagine they shouldn't have if they're going to be on stage,
Right.
or but actually, I think fear is a prerequisite for being on stage. Because if you don't have a sense of fear about getting up in front of people and saying something, then I think you don't really understand the responsibility of your position.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a responsibility to be on stage. I think you don't understand the gravity of it if you're not handling it with a sense of fear.
Yeah.
Um,
When I was lecturing, I did 2 years um, as a teacher teaching
yeah,
software programming. When I was lecturing, every lecture I would have some kind of stage fright. And I at some point I early on because I grew up on stage like music and
yeah.
other mostly music, but other stuff too. but I at some point I realized that it was not stage fright didn't feel like it captured it for me. I would call it crossing the threshold,
Mm,
and that crossing the threshold required a certain embodiment of agitation or intensity, or I don't know the right word. The it's neither of those things, and it's not fear. It was like you are becoming. Like I almost like imagine like walking into a spray of energy, and the spray like changes all of my cells so that for that time I am on stage or in front of the room with my laptop, live coding and teaching programming concepts or facilitating a workshop or whatever,
mm,
I don't belong to me. Like I'm holding the whole room and I'm being held
yeah,
by my tether to the divine. And that's like what it takes actually to be to let, the divine put their hand in through me and be the finger puppet of the universe or whatever.
yeah. I mean, how do you, what do you do in order to allow yourself to be ready for that? Or like what preconditions have to be in place in order for you to feel, because I mean,
Go ahead.
I'm curious about if this is also your experience. There are times where I can get up on stage and have that feeling, and it's absolutely wonderful. And there are times where I can get up on stage and, to not be too dramatic about it, I feel abandoned by God. I'm abandoned by God on stage, and I feel my utter fallibility, and I'm just nothing. I'm just a nothingness on stage, and nothing hits, nothing lands. For me, um, are there preconditions that you have to have in order to, what do you have to do? How do you ready yourself to be ready for that?
Well, this is actually, thanks for naming that. Thanks for naming that it's not always true that the threshold takes us into the whole I don't know how to articulate this thing that I did called the creative field, this 6 week long course that culminated in a performance. And
Mm,
that's because there are many articulations. Like one of the articulations is learning how to be in groups without dominating each other, how to coordinate and
mm,
organize ourselves. Another could be like a performance art residency to explore emergence and
mm,
play with the concept of emergence. I think this question you're asking also brings me to another, which is like how to cultivate the skill of being present under pressure. Um,
mm.
and I was saying this to one of my participants from the course came by for tea yesterday, and we were chatting, and I was sharing about how this is when I was studying Buto.
Yeah.
I didn't study Buto for very long, and I hope to return to it, but it was so influential because it helped me articulate something that I had known in my body but didn't have words for a long time, which is
Mm,
that there is a way of relating to creativity and flow and openness and I think like feeling empowered and feeling present that I have been describing as like the window being open.
mm,
Window is open, I can be there. I can dance, I can play, I can respond to new stimulus and change. I'm reflexive, hyper reflexive at times.
mm,
And then there's the other times when the window is closed. And as an artist, especially as a writer, this comes up a lot for me with writing, but as an artist and a performer and as a human, I have spent a lot of time preoccupied with is the window open or not? And that
mm.
preoccupation is a sign that the window is closed.
Just asking the question itself.
Just be attuning to like, oh, am I in flow or not?
Right, right, yeah,
And then how do I go from noticing, oh, I'm not present. I'm
yeah.
not in my body. I'm not enjoying this. I'm not seeking or like cultivating the sense of pleasure about what's happening. How do I go from that to enacting it and
Mm,
opening the field of invitation and possibility? And I think that's what I wanted to research in the course. And also, I don't know if I have words. I'm going to throw the question back at you. I think that I have some skills, like some requisite skills that we can work on, but I don't know if I have like this is what you need to do. I think you do it and then you keep doing it and then you one day it just happens.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm curious whether or not the people who you're in workshop with, the participants that you were talking about. I'd be curious to know what a kind of group answer to this question is, because um,
Yeah.
articulating it in articulating it in two already, I feel like we're driving towards something. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not really often enough working in like larger groups. So I'm really curious to know
Right.
how this is approached in a kind of group setting. Um,
I think there's like a dance between structure and structurelessness.
mm,
Offering enough structure to allow a group to feel permission, to drop into their body, to feel safe, to be intimate with each other. Like, whether that means eye contact or play with each other and making invitations of each other and engagement, which, especially in a group of strangers, especially in the US, but I see it kind of everywhere, it's like terrifying
mm,
and people get frozen and creating enough safety so the structure like to hold and what me and my group when we did our performance we had 40 people sitting in concentric circles and made
mm,
space in the center and we started but then we said anyone can come in and we set up some ground rules like how many people could come in and what would happen if we rang the bell all with the intention of providing safety
yeah,
containment but then we kind of just let it happen and there's something about trusting. I think that some of the leaders I work with, their edge, their stretch zone is in like learning how to provide more containment. And for some of them, it's learning how to take the hand off the wheel a little bit and let things just flow.
yeah.
I don't know, does this answer your question? Curious how you handle it just even when it's just because you've been doing this work where you're reading poetry with like a live scored musical ensemble. And that is exactly what you're naming. It's a group emergent process of creation.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think that's been uh, that's been a really wonderful learning experience of just performing at these various fundraisers where there just naturally is uh, a gang of maybe three or four musicians who are playing as I'm reading, and um, yeah, the kind of Palestine fundraiser scene here in Berlin has, or the kind of part of it that I've been found myself in, has emerged very naturally with this idea that okay, well, there's poetry, so of course there must be music, and I don't know if the poetry purist in me is like struggling, or at the beginning was struggling with how to deal with it and handle it, and a lot of listening is required. And I think at the beginning, I wasn't listening to the musicians around me. Um, Maybe because I felt like they weren't listening to me, or sort of petulant sense that you that you have, or
Mm.
you know your rhythm, like the rhythm in which you're reading it. You
Yes.
know it so well. So um, this is somebody who's hearing your work maybe for the first time and is being asked to produce, and improvise something off the back of that. And I have just so much respect for those musicians because, yeah, I mean, I think it's very challenging to be able to perform with musicians, I think, and it's a challenge that I've like grown to really relish and really enjoy. But I think it's been the case that I've had to prepare myself by sometimes allowing them to make the first note. Um, I think the first, if uh, if the silent when your name gets called, you go up on stage. if there is a moment of silence before the room, anything happens in the room, that's a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And not being the first one to make a mark on the blank canvas, but allowing the musicians to be the one who make the first mark, um, has allowed me to just feel a little bit, not like I have to drive the thing. Um, so that I think that's been really great learning, and I've been reading and performing poetry for a while, so it's really nice to feel pushed and challenged, and
Yeah.
I enjoy my regressions. I enjoy like things that I think maybe I would have learned once, like losing them, and then being like, oh, I have to learn that again.
Over and
Um,
over again.
yeah, my voice is different, my energy is different, so of course I have to learn it again. Like maybe I learned how to read poetry with musicians maybe 10 years ago, performing with other friends, and now I have to learn it again in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, and the work is different. And I think there's preparation for being on stage and what you do in order to open yourself to that flow. Um, but preparation, I think, also, um, for me, it's in that first moment. It's really, really key. And there's so many moments, so many times where I feel like I have fumbled my first moment. There was a time where, and I realized this because, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I used to get up on stage and I would not want to give any introduction or say anything. I just wanted to go straight into the work. Um, and it was kind of, it felt, I mean, it felt good for me because I didn't feel like I had to, I was like, I am the work, this is the work, that's it. I get up, I give it, I go, and then I'm done. Um, And I think it's been interesting for me to get up on stage and say, hi, I'm Hamza, blah, 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 blah. That's been really challenging. Learning to do that again has been really challenging. And that's something that I
Mm.
didn't know I had to learn to do again. So that first moment of getting up on stage is also really pressing and important, and
Yeah.
sets the tone for everything, I think.
I struggle with that framing stuff too, and framing is so important, you know. But even in this call, I'm like, I don't want to frame the thing. I'm like, let's do a grounding instead. And it's something to think about because the beginning and end, that's actually what contains the experience. And
Mhm.
it's not important to necessarily provide the, ABC details, but I think it is important to take intentionality into like, how do I want to frame this? And
Mm,
what am I asking you to, how am I asking you to be during this? Because people, there is a power that's given when somebody's on stage and everybody gives their attention. I want to wield that with some responsibility and accountability.
it's a big power, yeah.
I also want to highlight
I,
something you said about listening, the importance of
please.
listening and waiting for the first note to come from the musicians before you. I think there's a way that can helps me to articulate an answer to your own question. You mentioned about feeling abandoned by God on stage, and how do you work through that? How do you navigate that? And I think that one thing I have always loved about performing with others, and it's why I even wanted to do group work, and why
Mm,
I struggle when it's just me on stage sometimes, is because in the absence of feeling that divine presence guiding and shaping the experience, I have the others on stage with me, the other people who are the
right.
party. They
Yeah.
are they're sort of God's messengers, and if we can make them right, and we can, like, yes and is one way to put it, but just to dance with what's being offered through them, then I
Mm,
it's that questioning about, like, am I in flow? I am just in the dance.
mm. Gosh, I wish that's something I've had to learn to be on stage and feel undistracted, maybe, or um, I think I have grown up as a performer in a very monolithic in a very monolithic way, and there's something very DIY about being able to get up and your practice is kind of just you and the microphone, and it doesn't even have to be a microphone.
Right.
Actually, it can just be the practice is getting up and it's just you. Um, but yeah, I wish I've had to. I wish I had learned earlier or worked earlier with more people in the group setting on stage, because in some ways, embodying everything, being the author and the performer and the everything, and taking on all the responsibility, unlearning that is hard, and it makes me. I think in other parts of my practice, I want to be non-authoritarian. Like when I get up on stage, I have no problem in being the author and the performer,
Right.
and I have no problem actually commanding the full attention of the room. And there are times where I will demand it, if I'm honest with you. And if I don't get it, I will raise the level of my performance until I get it. Um, and I've had that feeling, but the feeling of like, I remember one performance before I got up on stage, the person who was on before me, they were performing. Somebody next to me, I was in the audience. Somebody next to me was just like chatting, just a little bit every now and again. And I was getting so frustrated. And I remember when I got up on stage, I was like, okay, that's the person who I have to win. I have to win that person over. If I win that person over, then I win the room.
Wow.
And I remember beginning my performance by locking eyes with them and starting the performance by talking directly to them and returning to them as my measure, my metronome kind of whenever I was like, do I have the room? Do I have them? I've got the room. I have this person. They're right there. And I think for me that's sometimes the challenge is to like if I feel like I don't have it, then I had this with a performance recently where I feel like I didn't have the room, but I was with the musicians
Right.
and I couldn't tell because the one thing that I really rely on as a performer on my own is the silence in the room. The quality and the sound of the silence tells me whether or not I'm with the audience or whether or not I don't have them. Um, and without that silence, I don't know. And I remember performing with the musicians and being in my head so much because I was like, I can't tell, I can't measure this room.
Is that something you want to share with people when you get on stage? Like, hey, actually, I would really, it'd be really important for me to hold silence with you all before we get into it.
Even with musicians, you mean, or in
Yeah, just like,
general?
hey, actually don't know what's going to happen. We're improvising, we're flowing, but one thing I need in order to do this is to hold silence with you all. Hold the room in silence before we start.
Mm, yeah, maybe it could be.
You know, the first thing in the creative field, the very first session was entirely focused on intimacy. And this is
Mm,
because of my belief. And I got this through doing the freaking sonic meditation practice, with
mm,
you all, which was started in Berlin, which is born of my relationships with everyone there. Which I'll just say for people watching this that sonic meditations is where I learned the concept of deep listening through the artist Paulina Oliveros, and everything that we're talking about here, I think is relevant. Her work is relevant to all of that.
mm,
I feel like I learned through that intimacy is the ultimate thing that allows a collaboration to flow.
mm,
And especially if you're doing improvised work together. Um, and intimacy comes in many forms. Sometimes the intimacy comes from doing the work together, but we also practiced naming our needs, which is actually
mm,
really hard sometimes and not culturally reinforced. Just like
mm,
naming needs as a way to say, and what is it like? What is it like to perform with a group of people where we all know each other's needs and we all feel safe that if I have a need that this group will hold it?
mm,
So I don't know, that's what came up hearing. I'm like, wow, you're very clear about what you need. I want you to have, if we're gonna get on stage together, I want you to have it.
Yeah, right, right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's if I think about the desire for that moment of silence. Again, if I'm by myself, if I'm by myself on stage, then I'll take it regardless.
Mm,
When I'm in the right mode, I might just stop in the middle of a work just to listen for a little moment. Um, I
mm,
might just stop in the like and just hear, and then I might go, and then I might stop again to just check,
yeah,
um, and look up and see.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and with the musicians, I have to learn how to find that silence, I think, in what it is that they're doing.
right.
I think music is so different, isn't it? Ugh, it, it's so full. Even if it's just one instrument, it absolutely fills the space. And it's so deeply immersive.
Yeah,
The sound of one instrument is you know, it's a complete match to a single voice. So I don't really know how, like, any musicians who are out here performing, you know, vocalists in bands and groups and of all kinds. I'm like, so much respect for making yourself heard amidst the noise.
right. Well,
It's
I took a musical
incredible.
improv class in college, one of the most interesting and classes that most informed my work now. And
Yeah.
one of the guest instructors, he would just keep reminding us space is the place.
Hmm.
Keep reminding, he'd be like, in the words of Sun Ra, space is the place. And he would, if he was like, you're
Yeah.
doing too much, what you need to do is do less and listen more. And I think that's a crucial part of making music with others, especially improvising. I think it's a crucial part of a good conversation. It's a crucial part of
Yeah.
co-creating a space of creativity with any kind of format. And
Yeah. I
go
was going to say, it brings me, this discussion brings me to a moment in my practice some years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, um, where I was invited on stage to get up and improvise with a cello player and a dancer. And I think I maybe told you about this, but it's just was one of the worst experiences of my life. Truly, truly, one of the worst experiences of my life. It was an experience of that I've described in retrospect as like akin to a kind of ego death because I completely lost my connection to my instrument.
right.
I was on stage and I was unable to articulate. Uh, I pushed through to the end of that maybe half an hour, 20 minute to half an hour performance. Um, and I don't recall ever feeling as bad as I did after that performance. I felt so disconnected on stage. I felt so disconnected afterwards. I was so sure that I had, and I'm sure still to this day, despite what maybe others have tried to tell me afterwards, I'm so sure that, in short, I bombed, you know.
Mm,
There's really performance language is the best way to talk about it, I think. I don't know, I short circuited, I malfunctioned, I lost it. And it's led to a really great fear that I have about improvising.
mm.
It's left me with a fear of improvising.
And then we're back at fear now.
Yeah.
There's more I want to say, but with 10 minutes left in this, I want to officially invite Caitlin up. If you're down, Kate, to unmute and be in the spotlight with us and speak on all of, because you're also you're also a performer.
Join
Yeah.
us.
I mean, we know each other in large part through performance.
Yes.
spaces, right? And also through
Mm.
hosting. So I had several thoughts while I was listening to you both. The first thought I had was just because it leads directly off what you were just talking about, Hamza, was because I remember one of these first like of the recent performances where you're like reading with music, um, that you came off stage afterwards and you were like, I wasn't expecting this. I didn't know this was going to happen,
Yeah.
and it changed my experience. It's changed my expectations, or it's meant that my expectations couldn't be what they were, and
Mm,
I have to reckon with that feeling. Um,
mm.
and you were just talking about improvisation, and it made me wonder. I mean, you're sort of talking about this performance, the sort of performances you're doing at the moment, with I guess some of the same people. But are you ever like to sort of yeah put the improvisation another thing? Are you ever doing rehearsals with people, or are you ever
Would
sorry, not rehearsals necessarily, but even just are you reading poetry while someone's playing music when it's not a performance for the the spaces like for on the stage?
with those musicians or at
Yeah,
all, you mean?
at
Oh,
all.
mm, no,
No. Yeah.
not at the moment.
Mm.
Um,
Let's all do a pulse check right now, because we're all on stage right now.
Yeah.
Are we bombing it? Are we doing, how are we, where are we? Well, zero is, this is, I'm bombing it. And five is, I'm doing the best performance of my life. Where are we? Three,
I,
two,
huh?
great. No one's a zero.
I feel great. I feel well held in great company, and I feel very free to talk, and I feel in flow. So I'm glad.
At five from Hamza. This is great.
Yeah, why not?
Taking that
I was
hike.
a three because I'd forgotten until you said that this was in fact a performance.
Oh shit. Oh, it's just it was just me and Hamza speaking for you, for our one audience member, you.
I was trying not to be. It's hard to, because when you were like, oh, I'm trying to see if Caitlin's laughing, I'm like, I have not been looking at the camera this entire time. I'm not looking, I'm concentrating on something. I mean, I'm concentrating on listening, but physically I am doing something else and
Yeah.
listening to
Mhm.
you. Because I'm like, this is a conversation between you two that I am like sitting in an armchair nearby and like overhear. You know that I'm there, but I'm overhearing it rather than
I
participating
think
in it.
what you offer the conversation is like a little bit more of an embodied feeling of we're not just talking at each other into
Yeah.
the ether. And I'm curious what the conversation is offering you. Like
Mm.
as you're listening, like what's landing in you and what do you um I don't know what's interesting that you want to say or bring forward.
Um, It was in, I mean, it's interesting. It's just interesting for me because because I've seen you, well, I've had friendships with you both and professional relationships in some sense with you both in terms of like seeing you coordinate and host spaces, collaborating on certain things together, as in, that all of us have collaborated in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Um, and uh and reflecting on like I guess zooming a little bit back and forth between how it is to listen to this as someone who has that like background knowledge and then listening
Mm.
without like trying to imagine what it's like to listen without that context a
Right.
little bit.
Mm.
Um which is it's impossible, but it's also like an interesting exercise sometimes. Um
It's
the
hard to imagine any other audience for me. I think I only imagine the two of you as the audience. I know that there's an
Except for
artifact
that.
maybe out here, but
Except for that one time where you made eye contact with that person and you were like, I'm doing this for you.
Oh, but for this conversation,
Oh,
right?
in
Or is
this
that
conversation. Oh,
we're
yeah.
imagining that one person from that one audience like coming and being like, "Oh, interesting.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
public conversation. I'm going to watch this archive."
Send this recording to that person, Hamza, so that they know that they matter. about their impact. Well, I think
With I had a
go ahead.
question actually for both of
Mm,
you to go back to so I had because I had the two thoughts. My first question was to bounce right back to the start of the conversation when you were talking about um being performative in some way,
Right.
or what it means to like bring a sort of self onto the stage that is maybe somewhat separate to the genuine, authentic self. And how hosting a space is means that it's not just on the stage that you're kind of in a potentially performing role, right? Um, and that the work that both of you do is not quite the same as like, this thing, Rishi, you were describing like going on stage and like performing a role that's like written by Shakespeare or whatever.
Yeah.
But in fact, the seams, the borders between what can be categorized in performance and what isn't, um, becomes a bit blurry. And whether then, and this is my actual question, it goes a little bit in the other direction at all. Um, that while we can seek to be as bring our whole and full and true selves to the stage as much as possible, whether in any sense there's also some and we may or may not achieve that, but whether there's any leakage back in the other direction of I have a sense of being perceived on stage, performing in a certain way, creating and crafting art that is embodied by me performing it, how much that comes then off the stage and into like the rest of uh life, I guess.
This is how people use the word performativity most of the time,
Sure.
right? Is that landing for you in terms of what you're asking about?
I think performativity has a lot of loadedness to it that I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily want to imbue
Sure.
this with.
Sure.
I think it's true that it has a kind of negative it has a negative connotation that I don't really I mean I'm not here to police how anyone is dealing with these things, but I just don't feel it for myself, to be honest. I think I think I do feel that movement in both ways, actually.
Mm.
I think I've learned a lot from the performance self that I have built
Hmm.
and then destroyed and then built and then destroyed at every stage. And I've learned how to, um, in my day-to-day regular life, uh, loosen up and bring more and be more characteristic and more animated and bring a fuller sense of self um, in a way that feels like much more connected to culturally for me. Like if I think about my family, they are incredibly performative people who have no problem in
Really?
raising their voice or gesturing in a dramatic way. Or, and if I think about like coming from the East End of London, I think about the typical East Enders. They're very performative, very full embodied people who, in their bodies and in themselves, react to what they're doing and what they're saying and giving everything. And I I didn't grow up like that. I didn't grow up bringing everything to my body and to my fullness and my voice and everything. And I've had to learn that from my performance self.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that resonates for me. I think growing up, especially in a culture where my who I was with my family was not seen. I had two
Mm,
English accents. I have an Indian accent that only comes out when I'm in India or with my when talking to my parents and
mm.
my brothers sometimes, or when I'm like performing being Indian, which is the thing I do. I think I used to do to win approval of my mostly white high school friends of that group, and how performance has been actually connected to safety for me,
Mm,
performing Americanness, performing whiteness, um, and fear. It's tied to fear, and like performing and fear, and they all come together. And I'm currently in a part of the upheaval I'm in my life is negotiating with myself around like how much do I want to show who I am? How much do I want to allow fear to drive certain kinds of performance? And I, rather than having a discrete answer, I'm just deciding to come into more intimacy with my own fear. and just
mm,
trust whatever's on the other side of that. So this is such a profound, we're like near, very near the end of this conversation, and it's such a profound thing to open into. But I do feel like maybe if there's like a bookmark for the next one, or for me to look at more imitation I want to make of you, Hamza, about it is about that sense of fear. And I think that I often find myself that when I'm playing, when I'm being playful, like when I was like, let's all rate ourselves for how good we're performing, or but many moments in this call, and with you, Hamza, one of the reasons I love hanging out with you, and with you, Kate, it happens with you a lot too, is I feel like I can make fun of myself. I feel that there's an
mm,
opportunity to be playful, and I think play is a way to perform the truth and feel good about it and feel pleasure. Um,
mm,
and so I'm like, the invitation I want to make is around fear and playing with the fear in such a way that is pleasurable and performing that fear or performing bombing. Like you're on
mm.
stage and you're with a group of musicians, you're improvising and it starts to suck and you're like, this sucks. And just going up to the mic and saying, this sucks. I don't know what it would look like for you and what your version of that is, but just um, dropping into that, the truth of like, oh, I am scared. I'm scared all the
Mm,
time. And part of what creates problems in my life and what has been creating problems in my life is that I'm reluctant to admit that I'm scared.
Mm.
mm,
And I do a lot of courageous things. And I think I'm known for doing weird, out there, random stuff, but I am not known for saying I'm scared. I don't know myself that
mm,
way. And so something I'm reshaping is admitting. And then maybe making a game out of it, like making some play out of the fear.
mm.
I think that I'll leave that as my last word. Um, would love to invite a last word from each of you.
Well, I'll give Hamza the absolute last word then and say that it was a pleasure as always to listen to you guys chatting. Thanks very much.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you to you both. Really grateful. The only thing that just popped into my mind as you were speaking, Rishi, is really about fear being uh, not always, maybe not necessarily always, but certainly sometimes a recognition of the stakes or a recognition of the gravity or the significance or the importance of something. And that maybe that's an entry point into understanding how pleasure and joy can be brought into it because fear is not necessarily very inviting, but understanding that we have a sense of that we have a sense of meaning or a sense of significance towards something, I think that is more inviting. So yeah, maybe that's a bookmark for another conversation. But very, very glad to have taken part in this one.
Mm. Maybe we can end with some collective silence
Mm,
and the way we started as its own framing. I love you both.
love you too.
Love you too.